So I hurt my back pretty bad Friday morning before we branded. It was just a dumb thing I did. So I'm kind of hoping that running this rototiller around will actually loosen that up for me. That'd be great. So I guess for those of you that have never used a jerry can before, this is a little seal that stops the gas from leaking out. This one doesn't have a vent on it unless it's built into this fancy cap somehow. So anyway, let's throw some fuel in here, see what happens. It was put away with quite a bit of fuel in it, so hopefully that doesn't mean that I'm gonna have trouble starting it. If I do have trouble starting it, we'll just prime it. After it hasn't ran for all winter, it's a good idea to check the oil, maybe even change the oil. Well, the oil's right up at the top. You can't see it, but there's a little measure here, and it's got a good fair amount of oil in it. Doesn't even look too dirty. So I got that job done. We did end up priming it, and when you prime it, I'll show you maybe sometime. You take the spark plug out and you put a little bit of gas in the hole. Make sure your spark plug is still good, and put the spark plug back in. Man, it fired up right after we did that. So it's always really important to wear ear protection. These I find are the best for me, that I don't have to have something over top my head. I was gonna tell you guys, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago or so, I loaded the kids in the car and we drove up to the local hardware store, farm store, and I bought this rototiller for myself for Mother's Day one year. And I think it was somewhere between $400 and $500. And I'll tell you, it is a beast. You gotta have a lot of upper body strength to manage that thing. You probably saw the way it was bounced around. Anyway, let's take a look at the potato patch. This potato patch was originally 4 30-inch beds, and we've decided to turn it into 8 100-foot rows of potatoes. So that's why there are some sod lumps in here. Between the rows, we never worked it up. We actually never worked up those beds at all. We just formed the beds, and we had covered it with plastic and hoped that we were going to get some rain before we did that or after, and we'd cover it up again, and gosh, we never got any rain for that. So we never planted anything in here last year. Well, I mean, I had a few squash in here, but that was nothing. It has kind of an unfortunate hill right in the middle, so sometimes you can trench water, but obviously that's not going to work in this case because the water will just run away. So I'm sure you saw in the background while I was tilling, they're starting to seed today. And like Glenn said last time, they're seeding Durham wheat, and that's just awesome.
To our potatoes this year, we are adding spruce needles and molasses water, and I address these both later on in the video. We have bought brand new seed potatoes this year. We have bought russet and red and Yukon Golds. Now I used the back of Tanner's truck because it was just the right height to cut potatoes. There's a lot of talk about cutting your potatoes ahead of time and letting the scabs heal. Well, we think that step is completely unnecessary. When it's time to plant potatoes, we just take our seed potatoes and we look for some eyes on them, which are those sprouts that are started, or sometimes you'll see the eyes without sprouts. So I like to keep a couple of eyes per cut. Now you see I cut that one there, and I'm showing how many spots there are on that. If you were really wanting to, you could cut that even smaller. To mark my row, I say Yukon Gold with needles and molasses water. Glenn starts digging the holes for me. Of course, we put up a string so we can monitor where these potatoes are. And I have this giant bucket of molasses water that I'm packing around. In the wind, you can see how windy it is. It was just awful, you guys. That was Friday night, and honestly, it was a serious test of patience. But to each hole, I dropped in some molasses water and some spruce needles, and then we were sure to water everything in and give it a good water on top when we were done, covering them up.
I've been feeling pretty brave the last couple of nights, and I left all my plants out here and I covered them with this cloth, this garden fabric. I'll put a picture of what I use for garden fabric, and I believe in this stuff, you guys, down to like minus 4 or 5 Celsius here. And so I just want to show you something. Just uncover everything. This plant here that I had you all sort of guess about, this is a mint, and it's Indian mint. And the lady at the greenhouse said that quite often people will buy this, because it's zone 8, I think, buy this as something to trellis, to hang down from their hanging pots or their big garden baskets. Here's what I buy: American netting and fabric, crop cover, all the specs. It says frost protection to 26 Fahrenheit or minus 3 Celsius. And I buy one of the biggest you can buy in the store, which is 6 feet by 25 feet. This tray here is a various tray of brassica type things and mustards that I have growing. And look at, they're coming up so nicely. And this tray here is a new tray of lettuces to transplant after these guys are done in the garden. Or, I mean, as a second planting. This, I should stand up my tarragon. That's rude. Sorry, tarragon. This is an iceberg lettuce. You know, just the round lettuce that's kind of the junk food of lettuce. And the first time ever we've done it, we've started corn inside that we're going to transplant out after the danger of frost has passed. We just have the beginnings of asparagus popping up. This little beauty here is, that's surrounded by dandelions, is garlic chives. Tarragon, apparently hardy to our zone. Thank you very much, tarragon. And the chives are totally going crazy. Gonna be making some stuff with fresh chives pretty soon. So Glenn told me this morning that some of our new radishes have flea beetle damage. You can see it kind of looks a little peppery. The leaves have little black spots kind of on them. These poor little plants are barely out of the ground and we're already having pest damage. We got a really excellent catch on our peas, our Lincoln Homesteaders that we saved the seed for. Super straight row net, way to go. This is the row of onion sets. You can see for the most part, they're really popping up. Same with this next row. They're really popping up. That's good to see. And then our next row is garlic. Like you can see some spots where it hasn't really come up yet. I believe it will. I'm in the southwest side of the garden. This is the side my sister-in-law had last year. And this little trench that we dug right here, we're going to be planting corn in it. This corn is specifically meant as a windbreak, and if it grows into something that we eat, then that's awesome. I saved some seed from Glenn's mom's corn because she grows great corn, and we're going to use that to seed. And we're going to plant them about 2 inches deep and 1 corn kernel about every 10 inches. We're going to water it in and then cover it up. We got the corn in. Glenn's gone and he's watering inside that row before I cover it back up. Okay, well that's the update on the garden. Let's finish off these potatoes. Glenn set up a second string for me and dug the holes on the next line. We called it last night because it was just too windy, guys. So he's out doing chores. I'm gonna plug in the next row of potatoes, which includes finishing off the Yukon Golds and then starting with some of the red potatoes. It's like the weather can't make up its mind here. It's like, should we be hot? Should we be cold? Just about out of spruce tips. So I'll use what I got. That's it. I see a giant chunk of manure. So before we knew better, we were going to make this a potato bed, and of course we top dressed it with manure compost. Turns out potatoes don't like manure compost. So this is now 3 years old, so I can't see it causing a big problem. It's one of the main causes of scab in potatoes. So there you go. That's your tip for today. Oh yeah, so I split up my molasses water because a 5-gallon bucket of this stuff is really heavy. And then I go and I leave my measuring cup in my other pail halfway down. Of course I did. So for fun fact, I measured how much one of these buckets weighs full of water, and it's 38 pounds. So as you can see, like in the last part of the video, I didn't explain it, but I'm putting 1 cup of the molasses water into each hole. And then as the plants start to grow and we can still access the outside of the bottom of the base of the plant, I'm gonna add more molasses water. It's starting to rain. I should tell you, the molasses water, this is roughly a 5-gallon pail. Now, US, Canadian, it's not US because it's not big enough. But I took 1 cup of unsulfured molasses and I put it into this pail full of water and just stirred it up. It mixes in really nicely. And then I just got a 2-cup measure here, and that makes it super simple to like just drop in 1 cup. Actually had to bust out the toque this morning. After getting sunburns this last week here in southern Alberta, I gotta bust out the toque. But it is gonna rain. Raindrops are falling on my head as we speak. And we have 1 more row of potatoes to plant, 1 more 100-foot row of potatoes, and then that's it till my sweet potatoes arrive. It's a cute gate that Glenn built me. So on the north side of our greenhouse here, we have kind of this area, and Glenn built this bed for me. He added him and Corbin added some compost to it, and I just rototilled it in. So it's a pretty decent sized bed here, and I'm gonna put something down on the side of the bed so that the grass doesn't creep in here from outside. And that is a tough thing. So let's look here. Sorry about the wind, guys. Like, if the sun is shining these days, it seems like we have wind. Oh, and there's my shadow. That's always nice. So lots of people have been planting asparagus lately, and here's my go at it. I made a nice trench for those root crowns to go over. So you just press them into there and drape the roots over the side. I'm gonna water that in and cover that up with about 3 inches of soil. And then just on the other side of it over here, I'm gonna plant 5 more.